Good morning. Up next, we have Going Global, Staying Local, capturing hearts and market share in the toy industry, presented by Tom Williams from the Insights family. Tom? All yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I feel like I've set myself the rather impossible task of covering off localization strategies in less than 20 minutes. So we will give it a go. We will get into it. There's some definite strategic pillars that I will be covering off, sharing some of that data with you as we really begin to look at how do we win the hearts and minds of kids and how localization plays such a crucial part in all of that. And the clicker is working, which is a good start. So a little bit of context, I guess, of really where the data is being driven from, of us and who I am. So CEO of the Insights family. We are the largest independent data collector and analyzing platform of the kids and families world. So we capture 22 respondents in every market. We're in 22 different countries, which gives us a really great fundamental base to be analyzing trends and how they vary across local markets. Really, where we operate and work with customers is around driving anything from content, products, and the play of tomorrow. And I'm clearly quite a data geek and how all that feeds into our decision making. So I've put a bunch of that out for you today. At the end, there is a QR code that I will put up on screen. There's some data heavy slides, so if you do want to come and grab it at the end, that QR code will let you download it, and we'll get into it. So when we begin to evaluate and look at where this global opportunity really sits, then we should probably start off with the industry as a whole. So you might have seen this data previously, but this begins to look at the size and scale of the toy industry and what's been going on since that kind of post-COVID era. We definitely saw some of that drive. It's been a tough couple of years, as we know, an exciting year ahead for us, but still a hugely growing industry. And if we look at what's been driving some of that, the exciting element for me here is how we look at licensed toys. All right, so an 8% year-over-year growth, which now takes it to 34% of all total toy sales is now driven from a licensing strategy. You've got some incredible IPs that center around that. Pokemon as another year at #1 spot for us, but kind of hot on the wheels behind them is your kind of Marvel and Star Wars characters. And we're going to dig into some of these areas as we go through. Now, when we take that to a deeper level, what I want to start going, and we're going to kind of broaden out certain areas, and then we're going to dive deep into some of the trends and changes that we're beginning to see. So these are the 11 super categories of toys and how they've changed and evolved over the last 4 or 5 years. And specifically, when we start to dive into those top fives, we can see it's actually been quite volatile from a kind of post-COVID era. And we saw a huge spike around kind of construction toys, plush toys, dolls and play sets as part of that kind of COVID period, which kind of throws out a bit of the data and it's been recovering since then. But really it started to highlight to us this trend that has continued to see of how toys play such a critical role in the mental health of kids. And we see that from plush toys as definitely driving comfort. Construction toys allowed people to get really quite creative, especially during lockdown and limitations of seeing family and friends. But across the board, we're now starting to see lots of areas grow and begin to benefit from that. When we then begin to look at the industry, and as I say, we want to make sure we kind of keep broad for this first section as we start to evaluate what does the opportunity look like. We look at time spent. So we do quite a lot of work with our clients when we look at where are kids spending that time, and then what are we all really competing for? So we can see that time spent with toys declines over age. That's the obvious piece. The real interest here is we're competing for about 10 hours of play every week. It's not a huge amount. So it's really, really important that we can do everything we can to ensure that nuances, especially at a local level, are followed to give ourselves the best opportunities for making the right level of impact. Now, do we really feel that this is a challenge? So not only do we speak to kids and families, every year we go out to the industry and we understand what are the challenges and pain points that we're feeling as an industry. Last year, 2/3 were aware of the importance of localization. However, nearly 3/4 of those felt they weren't quite getting it right, and it was a struggle to connect. So I've done quite a lot of these sessions. We do a lot of workshops with clients where we really start to go deeper and evaluate what is driving the struggle to connect, but then what are the kind of things that we can be doing to increase those connections. That's where we're going to spend the next kind of part of this presentation, is diving in some of those data, some of those kind of key pillars, and actually taking a little step back away from toys at times and seeing what are the origins of toys and how is that driving variances across different locations. So let's look at, let's start to get in some of the data. And we'll look at 3 to 12-year-olds looking at Q4 last year. And what we can begin to see, and we'll see this as a trend throughout the data that we're going to be sharing, there is an element of consistency across markets when we look at kind of top high performing brands, characters, or toys. The color codes of this, so the light blue that you see, is where the toys have actually originated as toys. We then look at, did it originate from film, from TV, from print, or from other games? The change that we see, and this, as I say, we'll see this as a trend throughout, you begin to step outside of those top threes, and this is where local nuances begin to have a real big impact. First of all, in the kind of brands that start to appear, you get local nuance, but also the origins, right? The top threes are all largely originated from toys. You begin to step outside of that, and we're seeing that film's playing a much bigger part. Print is playing a bigger part. We've got a bit of TV starting to play a bigger part. So actually, as we start to evaluate at a deeper level, this starts to drive some of the strategies that we'll go into. But also we saw that it was the big co's, right? So a lot of big toy co's out there. If we're all out there battling for these 10 hours, and we've got our top threes, what are we beginning to look at as we go down and look at the attitudes and behaviors of those kids? So the first key pillar we look at, and we're going to step a little bit away from toys, is knowing the entertainment. So how are kids actually immersifying themselves in entertainment? How do we really understand the user, the kid? The top genres of content right now, let's look at the US. Comedy, number 1, action adventure, number 2. Super obvious when we then think about action adventure linked to toys, right? Batman toys, Sonic toys, Marvel toys, Nerf. There's a huge long list of where action adventure has really played its part. Comedy, whilst is the number 1 trending genre for content in kids, has really struggled, right? I mean, it's not the easiest thing to make a comedic toy, but actually the gap that sits there largely sits around toys that are actually bringing laughter, bringing more laughter and fun as an opportunity. Now, again, those two sit pretty equal as top 2 in most markets, action and comedy. As we start to, again, utilize data to go a little bit deeper and a little bit broader with that, what we can really start to understand is the nuances that then sit outside of those top 2s begin to change at a local level. Fantasy across Brazil, dragon toys, incredibly hot property for us right now there. Sport sits across everywhere. When we look at the US, music is really starting to play its part. And that's not just necessarily in instruments, but actually how do kind of music or interactive music-led toys begin to play their part? So again, as we saw with the previous couple of slides, top 1s, top 2s, top 3s at a local level became pretty consistent. Outside of that, there's an opportunity to look at localization and local penetration in there. Next, we get away from entertainment, we start to look at brands and content. A bit of a busier slide here. But again, you have your classic preschoolers that we all know are higher performing. Where does Paw Patrol perform? How are the Transformers, Pokemon, how are they performing across markets? But then you have those characters and brands that are really, really popping within a specific location. Just take a look at Bluey of how that compares into the US right now. Or Naruto when you think about Brazil. Outside of those tops, there is this huge opportunity again for us to learn and understand what is trending, what is working at a local level. The next level that we take this, and we won't get into it now from a time perspective, is but what's the kind of DNA that sits behind these brands? And how do we work with our clients to understand that at a deeper level? Sorry about the slides, jumps out a little bit. Interestingly then as well, the latest trend that we're starting to see is the origin of that content. It used to be that such a huge influence of that came from Hollywood driving a lot of the kind of content and the origins of film and TV. But in actual fact, we're not seeing the priorities set by kids now against the origin of where that content is coming from. Whether it's an in US or an out of US origin, it's not playing its part and it's not a priority for kids anymore. So we've kind of looked at entertainment, we've looked at brands, and really we're going through and trying to understand the lives and the kind of the full ecosystem. Next, we want to look at barriers and motivations as the critical third step in this process. And as I say, I'll put the QR code on, so feel free to take photos, but there will be a chance to kind of take this away. So what is driving that purchase behaviors? What is driving that intent? Largely, we begin to see that is driven by parents still. Still a huge influence from parents. But as we start to look at different markets, that starts to vary and change, right? If you look at some of the China data there, the kind of eco-friendly credentials are really starting to come through. The same for Brazil. What it stands for and how it matters, again, that is really driving kind of intent following a purchase there. Does it help me actually improve? Does it help me upskill? Again, local nuance that isn't that important across Italy, not that important across the US, but if you were trying to drive distribution across China or Brazil, then that would become a critical part of your messaging to ensure that you get the right kind of, it resonates at the right level in the right way. Understanding how that then impacts purchase decisions, so the influence that a kid has, pretty high, right? So they still have really big influence on what is getting purchased. And I will attest to that as my 4-year-old has put his request in for my trip to the US. He has his list. Top of his list, oddly enough, is the green lady holding the torch. He'd like me to bring that home for him. So I might struggle with that one. So I will be one of those tourists in the souvenir shops trying to find the Statue of Liberty to be taking home with me. But they definitely play a big part and they really do influence the purchase decision. So we have to understand them at the right level, right? We also have to understand how that impacts at parents' level, right? So we take a step up away from kids and we begin to look at the parents and understanding them as gatekeepers. What is the kind of messaging that needs to resonate at a local level with parents? So first off, what's driving their decision making? Educational value always fares quite high, value for money. Again, if we're thinking about messaging and distribution, especially in China, problem solving and safety features need to absolutely become part of that messaging. This is where local nuance will really help products land and resonate. Marketing channels. This is always an interesting one. This is always a hot topic for debate with clients. Of what are those trusted sources? Now we know that TV viewership is on a decline. Yet year on year, it is still the most trusted ads platform. Then when we step outside and we begin to look at incredible nuances around platforms, we still see Facebook appearing really high from a trust perspective in parents across the US right now. And I think, as the millennials who really were the first users of Facebook and really began to become part of their lives, trust in those adverts still sits there. Instagram in Brazil, not so much across the US. So again, local nuance begins to really take a hold in how do we want to message, but then what platforms are we able to deliver that message? That just breaks out the top two of how that then switches and changes of driving the right level of intent with kids. And then when we look at this begins to go back to the kids' view here of what happens the moment that they see an ad. So what is the message that kids are taking away? Whether is it driving interest in the product? Is it driving purchase behaviors? Is it driving more brand awareness? Is it driving us to ask parents? Again, we need to understand what the purchase intent is then kind of creating around that. So some have done it well. Oh, we are working. When we think about Hot Wheels, localization in Italy, an incredible partnership was formed. Race events, the ACI, delivered really, really great partnership at a very, very much local level. Taking that and then considering not only looking at localized products, so thinking around product development, that was a win. Promotion, as we're talking around, how do we deliver that message? So localized views on partnership networks and messaging, but then also actually understanding distribution. How does that change at a local level? So an incredible initiative across the globe here that looks at amending and the nuances around product, promotion, and distribution. So there's a few areas of takeaway here, and I'm aware that there's some data that was thrown up there, so please do kind of grab the QR code at the end and you can go deeper. But really, success has to start with understanding. And understanding that there is local nuance. Despite when people show you top threes, it may not say that. Step outside the big trends, and nuances really do start to vary. They really do start to change. Kids' media and entertainment is varying by country by country. Consumption is varying country by country. The platforms and tools that we should be using are varying country by country. So I implore you to ensure that you are tracking and understanding those data points, understanding how and where you should be communicating and how. And what does this actually mean? So what's next? Continue to capture and gather, but always begin and address independent data. There's a huge amount of data out there. Independence is critical when you begin to evaluate and build data into your strategies. Test, test, test. Test has to be part of that, of how do you test that, is that messaging going to land, what are those nuances. Always invest in local partnerships. If we believe and trust that local nuance is there and we don't understand it, invest in partnerships that can help with that understanding. And just in case that wasn't hard enough, it's always changing. So what's right now may not be right what's next month, it may not be right for next year. So believe that it's always evolving. No 2 months are the same, no 2 years are the same. So that's where data and testing really kind of comes in and plays its part. So thank you very much for listening. Grab a photo, grab slides. I am going to go and spend some time over at the speaker section. So we've got about a minute and a half if there are a couple of questions, or you will find me over there afterwards. And feel free to come and interrogate, come and chat data, anything you need. Thank you all.